What's up, guys? Out here on the lake today. Just got done fishing. It's about 6 o'clock on a Friday evening, and you know, I caught a lot of fish today. I probably caught 15 to 20 fish. Today went out on Lake Maumelle, and I actually got out here after lunch, so it was about 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. so 5 hours of fishing in the afternoon. And we had some different weather. It looks like kind of a fronts rolled through, so we had some cloud cover sporadically, but a good portion of the day was sunny, and there wasn't a bunch of wind. But I went out today and I decided to throw a swim jig, and for the most part that's because Lake Maumelle has a lot of different types of cover, and it kind of messes up a lot of other techniques. If you wanted to throw a crankbait, you got to go pretty far off the bank to get it without getting some kind of grass or you know, the reed type cover that Maumelle has. So I decided to throw a swim jig because the water temp's in the mid 60s, mid to low 60s, and the fish are headed to the bank. You know, it's mid-April right now, and so the fish are starting to spawn and are definitely cruising the shallows in Arkansas. And you know, a lot of this cover that I'm fishing around today, you know, here's a couple for instance. There's a lot of hard reed type stems, a lot of different types of grassy vegetation, and then also mixed in there are some like dollar pads, you know, and you can see why they call them that. It looks like a dollar coin, but a lot of dollar pads mixed in. And you know, the bite was slow at first, but I started to figure it out, and you know, I started catching numbers. I'm not obviously catching 20 pounds every cast, but I started catching numbers, and a lot of it has to do with where I was throwing the swim jig. It seems there was like a 5 to 10 foot gap from the bank, the shoreline cover, which are bushes, clay banks, you know, a couple cypress trees here and there. From that shoreline cover to the first wave of grass or dollar pads, it's about 5 to 10 feet, and so I could fish probably even 30 to 40 feet at times off the bank, and I could make that cast and get right beside a bush, but also I could fish that spot, you know, where that clean edge where there's no grass or no sticks or anything like that. And then I could also bring my swim jig through this different types of cover, and it seemed where they mixed was the best. And that's kind of a rule of thumb, it seems, all over the country. Where you get multiple types of vegetation to mix seems to be the best place. It's almost a perfect environment for all these fish to congregate around. But there was also key points within the different cover. These dollar pads have long vines that connect to the bottom. When I was throwing that swim jig, it would start to pull the rod down because the line would either catch the dollar pad vines or the swim jig itself would catch them. And so I would have to, you know, pop my rod tip to get it through some of that stuff cleanly. Otherwise I would just raise up, and these things, they break pretty easy. So you can it breaks, you know, with a lift of a rod. So I would kind of pump my rod tip, get it through the cover. And it seemed, you know, if I could get a cast without hitting the dollar pad vines, it seemed like I could get a fish if the conditions set up right. There's a lot of different swings on these banks, and a lot of these little points, you know, on the map. The map's going to show you just a smooth shoreline, but a lot of these bushes form points. There's multiple bushes on a point, sticks out, and the grass kind of follows that, the contour of the bank. So it seemed as soon as I got around a cluster of bushes that were almost by themselves, and I say that, but they're not out in the middle by themselves, but they're maybe 10 feet away from other bushes. It's almost like a little island of bushes, and I would be able to get bit off the bushes doing that. But also, whenever I was hitting all this cover, you know, when we had a slight chop on the water today, you know, throughout the day, but I'd be fishing down the bank and I'd look behind me, you know, 20 feet, 30 feet off the back of my boat, and I could see where the waves were, or the chop on the water was going, and it would be almost like a calm spot. And it wasn't like definitive bushes sticking up or something like that, but it was just calm. And that was a quick giveaway that there was vegetation underneath of it, almost, you know, comes right up to the top of the surface. So, and that's a clue automatically. I was like, I'm gonna turn around and throw to that because it's almost like its own island. I was catching them on islands of bushes, and this vegetation off the bank behind my boat was its own little island. And I could just cross it up multiple casts, you know, chop it up like a pie, and I could almost find that cast and I could catch 2 or 3, and I would catch a pickerel here or there, and they would even clue me in to where kind of the hard edge, where that grass that's making all this calm spot, where it stopped, and I could almost run my bait right by it so I wouldn't get all messed up with it, but that it was still close enough to the cover that the fish could ambush it. So it didn't seem like it mattered which type of cover. I could catch them a lot of different ways today, but one thing that did matter was I started out, I love throwing a white swim jig. If I can throw a white swim jig and catch fish, that's my preference. It's easier when you're fishing it. I can see it farther down in the water, and also if you're tracking it and you're watching it, you'll feel the bite, but you can also watch it disappear. So I love throwing a white swim jig, but it was really sunny when I got here, not a lot of wind when I got here, so that white was so bright, and the lake here is pretty clear, so the fish could probably see it a mile away, and I just thought it was too bright for the conditions that we had. So I switched up to a bluegill colored type swim jig, and this one's all mangled up from today, but I think both of them 3/8 or ½ ounce. You really don't need any other swim jig weight. And for my bluegill colored swim jig, I had a Z-Craw, a Zoom Z-Craw on the back, and this one is like a green pumpkin with like a gold flake. It's like a laminate. It's a two-tone colored bait, and that almost brightened up the bait a little bit. That flash did. But I also did throw green pumpkin itself. I ran out of green pumpkin ones, so this was the second best option that I had, that kind of still gave it some profile, still gave it some flash, but it wasn't overwhelming. So that was my go-to for that swim jig. And overall, I mean, you only need 3 colors of swim jigs, obviously. There's not many other colors other than that, but a white, bluegill colored, like green pumpkin type, and then a black and blue. And a black and blue plays really, really good across the country. But you know, black and blue is not everyone's comfort zone. It's not mine for a swim jig, so to say. You know, if I was flipping a jig, it would be a different story. I would prefer a black and blue on certain circumstances, but I like a white and a bluegill. Doesn't matter really what brand. This is a Dirty Jigs white swim jig. This is a Strike King. And I also throw the V&M. They make a pacemaker one. I love the head design on that one, and the line tie. It helps me bring it over cover if I'm bringing it through wood. The line tie is horizontal, so every time I lift my rod, it lifts the head up, and I can pull it over things a lot easier. This is perfect for grass. Obviously, you can see the head shape. It's perfect for grass, and the Dirty Jigs is just an all-around good head style. So, and I also have a white Z-Craw Junior on the back of this one. Z-Craw is a really awesome bait. If you haven't tried it yet, it's great for trailers, whether you're flipping a jig or swimming a jig. Guys, I don't pair it on some super stout rod, and unless you're in Florida or Georgia or the Cal Delta in California or places like that, you know, I haven't fished a bunch of those with a swim jig, so obviously I haven't messed with braid. But braid, as you see it, you know, Toledo Bend, those big fish lakes that have really heavy vegetation and, you know, giant fish, you know, 7+ pounders on any cast. Definitely braid's probably the go-to on those type fisheries. But for Maumelle, a lot of fish, not a lot of big fish. I prefer fluorocarbon. You know, fluorocarbon's just, it comes through just as fine, and if you use 20 pound, you don't really have to worry about breaking at all. And I hardly retied today unless I you know, got stuck in a bush, and then I wanted to make sure I retied if it got frayed. But I throw it on an MHX MB874, and for those who might not know the lingo, an 874 is a 7'3" rod. It's about a medium heavy, and I love this rod for a swim jig. I like to flip with it as well. It's really an all-around great rod for, you know, I could throw a buzzbait on it just as easy, and you know, those moving baits that you need a little bit of backbone for, but you don't really need it for, you know, super heavy cover. So I like to throw the MB874 7'3", 20-pound Seaguar Invis-X Fluorocarbon, and then a Lews BB2. I don't know if gear ratio really makes a difference on your reels, but this is a 7 1-to-1, and I like how heavy duty this thing is, that I can you know, I can pick up a lot of line with it as well, which does help, because sometimes if you're waking your swim jig right on the surface and they come up and grab it, you set the hook and all of a sudden, boom, they're on the top of the water, and you got to catch up to them. So I like that. I don't know if that's everybody has their own rules and what they prefer, so do what you want. For sure, I don't think that the gear ratio really matters unless you get to like a lower gear ratio, like a 5 something. I think that's too low, but a 6 is a normal standard reel size or reel ratio, and anything from the standard 6.1 or 6.4 and up seems fine with me. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys learned a thing or two about swim jigs. It's a really versatile bait, and if you mix up the colors, you can fish it anywhere across the country, almost, you know, at least 3 of the seasons of the year out of the 4. So pick up a swim jig, pick up a MHX 7'3" medium heavy rod, and you'll be able to catch swim jig fish as well.